Thought we could talk a little bit about this idea of embracing love in a time of war. So as we're seeing these events unfold in the Ukraine, Russia invading this country, it can seem kind of futile to think about embracing love, think about talking love. Let's talk about love as there's war unfolding across the world. But that's not necessarily true. It can still, I wanted to talk a little bit about how it's still valuable to continue to talk about these ideas of love and spread love in our lives, spread love in the world around us, even as war unfolds on the other side of the planet. And so, uh, so a common idea, so an idea that comes up sometimes is how, just in general, what good does it do to talk about love, to spread love when there's all this suffering out in the world, all this injustice out in the world? It's like, what good is it us talking about love? How can we spew these words about love when there's so much suffering and injustice in the world? And one way that Matt Kahn talks about it that I think is really helpful, he says that if you see suffering in front of you and you can do something about it, then take action and do it. If there's someone suffering in front of you, or if there's injustice unfolding in front of you, if you see someone being harassed and it's safe for you to intervene. So if you have an opportunity to help someone right in front of you, then by all means do it. Take action, do something about it. But if your life doesn't have those opportunities, or those opportunities to directly help someone who is suffering or injustice, then one of the best things we can do for the world, in light of directly intervening in any suffering or injustice, is to, the way he described it, is to anchor the opposite vibration. So if you see injustice in the world, you see suffering, you see hate, a way to counteract that, if you can't, again, if you're not in a position to directly counter it, a way to affect that is to, like as he says it, anchor the opposite vibration. And so I kind of like this idea that to help deal with all the suffering and injustice we see in the world, bringing more love into our environment by focusing on love, by the heart-centered meditation techniques we practice to create that feeling of love within us and then share that love with people around us. That is a way to make the world a better place, to bring more of the opposite of hate into the world. So the anger and hate and injustice, those are all the things that are causing the suffering in the world. And by consciously choosing to bring the opposite vibration into the world, maybe we can actually do a little bit to make the world a better place. And I know this idea does seem a little bit out there, but it seems like it's worth a try. I don't think many of us are about to go enlist in the army and fight against the war in Ukraine. So, and definitely there are things you can do, like give aid to relief efforts, like the International Rescue Committee, things like that. So definitely, if you feel called, you can give monetary assistance whenever necessary. But if there aren't any other obvious good options to directly help these events unfolding far on the other side of the world, maybe it's just as good to sit here in our lives and anchor more love, bring more of the vibration of love and healing and compassion into the world here, and spread it to the people in our lives here. And so I saw a really interesting article published by the Greater Good Foundation out of Berkeley. It was about this study done by some society. I think it's called the Society for Sustainable Peace or something like that. But this study, this group, they focus on they study the countries in the world that are peaceful, that have a long history of not getting into wars with their neighbors. So, for example, the Nordic countries, where all the descendants of the Vikings live, for the last 200 years or so, they haven't been involved in any wars. Had peaceful relations among themselves and with their neighbors. And so there are, even though it doesn't seem like it, there are quite a few countries throughout the world that have peaceful histories and are able to maintain peaceful relations with all their neighbors. And so this group tried to study look for some of the commonalities among these countries. And one of the things they found are the values among the citizens, the individual values that people hold and the community values that people share. And all of these values, I think maybe I'll even share my screen. Let's see how I could see. Oh, there it is, share screen. Where is that? Oh, that's the map of Ukraine. Hold on. Here we go. All right, can you see my screen? Cool. So some of these values that they found that are common among these peaceful countries, I thought were very interesting. And endorsement of self-transcendent values, endorsement of openness, cooperative orientation, peace beliefs. So some of the individual elements, nonviolent values and attitudes. Then among community elements, there's some interesting things about parenting, high ratios of positivity to negativity in parenting, high education's degree of cooperative reward structures. So this is a very interesting article, and there's all these shared values that are all about cooperation and openness and peace and understanding. And so I think it's not too much of a stress to think that the more people in our country that are trying to spread messages of openness and cooperation and peace, if enough people started doing this, we could maybe make our country a little bit more peaceful. Maybe because one of the ideas is that these values spread from the bottom up, not the top down. It's that the way people interact with each other, the way families interact, the way communities interact, bubbles up to the way that the leaders interact with each other and with the world. So it kind of gives hope to the idea that if enough of us ordinary average citizens went through our lives spreading love, spreading peace, spreading messages of cooperation and openness, maybe we could actually affect how our country interacts with the rest of the world. Now I know it's a pretty far out there idea given the current state of our country, but it still seems like a valid possibility and a valid course of action. And it's definitely better than spreading hate, spreading anger. And one thing I think it's important to talk about is how it doesn't do any good for us to hate all of Russia. Like I was on a hike this weekend and saw some graffiti, some fresh graffiti. It said like "kill Russia" and then some other person's name. And I've seen some other memes about this on Facebook about how hating the Russian people is not going to do any good. It's not, and I'm sure you've probably seen posts about all the people in Russia protesting, the Russian citizens protesting against this war. So it may be tempting for some people to want to cast this blanket of hate and blame on all of Russia and all of the Russian people. But a lot of those people are just ordinary citizens like us that are being governed by power-hungry people, that power-hungry leaders that are causing all this war and destruction for their mostly for their own personal gain. And so it's not the citizens of Russia that deserve our blame and our anger. It's just the leaders, the same way that our leaders lead us into wars when we don't want them. So I think I just wanted to share that little message of tolerance for the Russian people. Um, and so I think that's about all I have to say on this idea. Any questions or comments about that?